Well, back now to one of our other top stories, the escalating tension over Tibet. It couldn't have come at a worse time for China. The Beijing Olympics are just months away, and the country is under growing international scrutiny. If China reacts too harshly, it could be risking a huge global backlash. So it must step carefully on the tightrope over Tibet. Here's Joan Leishman.
Next week, the Olympic torch relay begins its journey from Athens to Beijing. The theme of the relay is Journey of Harmony. But as protests spread beyond Tibet, China is having a tough time portraying national harmony to the world right now. It's a plot to discredit the Chinese government, says Tibet's governor.
This is a planned, plotted activity that aims at splitting the country, sabotaging the union, and harming the harmony and social stability of Tibet.
Harmony and stability that come at the end of a gun, says Tibet's exiled spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama.
The stability, unity must come from heart, not simply physical control by force. It is the wrong method. Now, China has done that. Now, over 50 years, they've done that. Fail.
It was more than 50 years ago that communist troops occupied Tibet. There's been relentless religious repression ever since. And that's likely what sparked this latest round of protests, too, says Tibet expert Professor Ronald Schwartz.
It may have been actually a reaction to increased repression within the monasteries. For instance, monks being required to sign denunciations of the Dalai Lama, perhaps monks being thrown out of the monasteries, or monks not being allowed into the monasteries, or just a kind of increased tempo of surveillance and re-education.
Protests that began in the monasteries spread, tapping into deeper anxieties that all Tibetans are feeling.
When ordinary citizens got involved in protest, it very quickly took on an ethnic dimension. And what you see being expressed here is perhaps a decade or more than a decade of growing bitterness and growing resentment toward the constant stream of Han Chinese settlers, particularly into Lhasa. And the economic development, in turn, which has occurred during that period, Tibetans at least perceive the benefits as going primarily to those same Han Chinese settlers.
What's very worrying to the government is that the protests have spread beyond Tibet. In the Chinese province of Ganzhou, police opened fire on 5,000 Tibetan protesters. In Sichuan and Qinghai, there's also been protests and police crackdowns. While opposition to Beijing's handling of this crisis is catching fire around the world, don't expect the government to back down, says China expert Dr. Renran Jiang.
They also don't want to so-called compromise what they consider to be the core national interest, that is the separation of Tibet or Taiwan during this period of time. They will say they will do anything. Even the Olympics is in ruins, they will not budge on the bottom line of sovereignty issues.
And although Beijing will continue to come down hard, many predict it's far from over.
We have not seen the end of this. I guarantee you, in the next 140, 50 days leading to August Olympics, you will see more of these. Maybe not in such a violent manner, but other type of domestic and international events related to Olympics and political events will happen.
Well, I find it frankly quite terrifying. And what the future holds, at least in the near term, for Tibetans is really something that everyone should worry about.
Joan Leishman, CBC News.